Hello, and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Andrea, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the Unity of Fredericksburg weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. We thank those of you watching on YouTube, live or later, and invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Our weekly newsletter includes the Sunday service link, and you can subscribe to receive that on our website at uofva.org. For everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at uofva.org for all of the details. Our message today comes from our minister, Reverend Cheryl Fair. And now here's Reverend Cheryl.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome. Welcome everyone who is in the Zoom room with me right now. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, whether you're watching now or later, we appreciate you being a part of the energy that is Unity of Fredericksburg. Our broadcast date today is Sunday, April the 5th. It is Easter Sunday, and I'm starting off today with a few riddles for Easter Sunday. Where do you find the Easter Bunny? Depends on where you left him. What's the best way to catch the Easter Bunny? Have someone throw him to you. And how do you get the Easter Bunny to put in more hours? Increase his celery. So that's my start to Easter Sunday. And the popular culture around Easter involves lots of springtime symbols, right? Baby bunnies, baby chicks, and decorated eggs. Doesn't show up well on camera, but this is a pretty little egg that I have around here. So, no matter how you do Easter Sunday, it is a wonderful time to gather with loved ones and lean into that energy of rebirth and resurrection with life in bloom following a long winter. And we had a long winter here in Central Virginia this year. So, this year, Easter also falls on the first Sunday of April. And here at Unity of Fredericksburg, as we follow the rhythm of our annual theme, our focus for this month is on being present with life. And that includes all phases of life. And the Easter story, the biblical Easter story, certainly shines the light into many phases of life that we can identify with as we go through our human lives, as we reflect on that biblical story. Now, in Unity, we always kind of use a metaphysical lens to look at things that we read about in the Bible. Here's a quote from Unity minister Eric Butterworth in Discover the Power Within You. Metaphysically, Easter is the awakening and arising to spiritual consciousness and the Christ within us. And here's another good quote. This one comes from Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of Science of Mind. It's from the book, The Science of Mind. The resurrection is the death of the belief that we are separated from God. The death of the belief that we are separated from God. So, when it comes to this biblical story of Easter, there are so many themes, so many happenings. It ranges from tragic and traumatic to joyous and transformational. This year, I have felt led, I've chosen to weave the biblical story of Easter together with Unity's teachings on the 12 powers. So, the 12 powers are a set of divine ideas developed by Unity founder Charles Fillmore. These powers were taught by Fillmore as faculties that we have, spiritual abilities that are the part of the spiritual cloth of our being. So they are aspects of the divine. And as we are expressions of the divine, they are ways in which we can express the light of God. And intentionally working with our 12 powers helps us to be present in all phases of our lives. And of course, Jesus expressed these divine lights of the 12 powers as well. And the life and teachings of Jesus serve as an abiding example for us. So as we look at Holy Week, and that's the week between Palm Sunday, last Sunday, and Easter, today, we're going to look at how Jesus expressed the 12 powers. So the Holy Week story takes us through some intense hills and valleys of human life, and Jesus, how he moves through all of that is an inspirational example for us of how we can navigate the hills and valleys of our own lives. Now, one note before I begin addressing the 12 powers and Jesus is that I want to recognize that our 12 powers are always fully present, whether we realize it or not. And we're always using them, whether we realize it or not. Sometimes we're using them in very passive sorts of ways. Sometimes we're using them in unproductive kinds of ways. Sometimes we are claiming them and using them in wonderful ways. But the 12 powers are present all the time and certainly were for Jesus as well. For the purposes of our talk today, I'm just going to be focusing on kind of one at a time, but I just wanted to mention Jesus would have been working all of those divine qualities all the time. We'll just focus on one at a time for the purposes of our journey today. So, starting with Palm Sunday, which was a week ago. That is, for those who may not have been with us last Sunday, that's the day that Jesus and his disciples entered Jerusalem and all the crowd show up. Now, many in the crowd are expecting a political liberator. They're expecting a big show, which is how kind of, um, leaders would show up with all of their wealth and all of their, arms on display. And how did Jesus show up? Jesus shows up in a humble nature, right? Riding a donkey. And as I think about that, here is Jesus demonstrating this divine power of understanding the spiritual divine nature of everyone present, understanding his own divine nature, understanding that everyone else present is there in their divine nature, and recognizing the oneness. So he doesn't show up in a way that separates him and makes him look bigger or more important. He shows up at a level of connection and understanding. So I see him exercising that power of understanding, and I also see him exercising his power of faith. He knows what he believes, and no matter what's going on around him, because you've got the folks who are fanning him with palm branches, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on. There are people that don't like him. There are people that are, there are all kinds of things. And Jesus shows up as steady and anchored in his faith. So on Palm Sunday, I see him in particular exercising those powers of understanding, spiritual understanding, and faith. Moving on to the next day in Holy Week. Monday of Holy Week is the day that Jesus enters the temple with his followers. And in a powerful display of spiritual zeal, Jesus topples the tables of all of the money lenders and money changers who are doing their business of commerce in the sacred space of the temple. And he is, in a zealous and passionate sort of way, clearing those tables and clearing that kind of activity out of the sacred space of the temple. Now, sometimes we show up with zeal as a powerful display. Sometimes zeal shows up as a quiet devotion, but Jesus is definitely showing us that power of zeal on that Monday of Holy Week at the temple. Now, moving on to Tuesday of Holy Week. On that day, Jesus returns to the temple, having cleansed it of all of the activity of commerce. He returns to the temple. He teaches openly with the priests of the temple. He has debates with them. He is challenging various people there around the topic of hypocrisy. He is demonstrating his power of mastery. So the power of, it's also known as the power of power or power of dominion. Jesus is speaking truth in this sacred space with the leaders in that space. He is demonstrating his mastery of the Jewish scripture, and he is standing and speaking the truth of his own teachings. And, even as we know that there is all kinds of ripples of opposition all around him, he is speaking his truth and he is demonstrating mastery. All right. Next, we move on to Wednesday of Holy Week. And in some circles, this is called the Silent Day because there's nothing written about what he was doing that day. However, Scripture is pretty clear, and this is something that we talked about on Palm Sunday, of Jesus's pattern and the kind of the rhythm that he is keeping to keep himself steady. He is, number one, spending time with loved ones. So I think that we can count on the fact, since there's no documentation of him leaving where he's staying, he had tendency to stay in Bethany with the family of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. So he was staying with loved ones, just like we talked about on Palm Sunday, and he's spending time in prayer. So he basically is doing his daily practice, connecting with loved ones, spending time in prayer. And for me, when I think about this, this is a time of preparation. He's aware that big changes are coming. He is staying in his practice and he is practicing the power of order. So he's kind of staying with his spiritual routine, allowing his time in prayer and in the silence to reveal the next best step. And he's trusting in divine order. He's trusting that the next best step will lead him to the next place he needs to be. He's not forcing anything. He's not rushing into anything. It's like a moment of the stillness before the storm, a day of interior readiness for him. So, the power of order. The next day in Holy Week is frequently called Maundy Thursday, and the word Maundy has French background. I don't have those notes in front of me today, but I know I've looked it up in the past. So a lot of things happen on Maundy Thursday. After sunset on that Thursday of Holy Week, he gathers his disciples for Passover, for a Passover meal. And his first step in a divine expression of the power of love, he washes the feet of the disciples, demonstrating for them how we are to be with each other, caring for each other, supporting each other, not feeling the need to be in charge or be better or what, but to be humble and caring for others. So he demonstrates that power of love, and he also connects that with his power of spiritual imagination to provide a lesson. And in the lesson, he provides his new commandments. And you can find this in Matthew 22, verses 37 through 39. This will sound familiar to many of you. His commandments, connecting love and his power of imagination to say how it is that he would like to see all of us going forward. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Just like to allow some space around that. From there, he moves into a meal with his disciples. And we talked about that a lot last week on Palm Sunday, where throughout the meal he provides a lesson. And the lesson really links up with what I was talking about before with the power of order, the things that we do in our daily lives, the rhythm of our lives, the sequence of how things happen, that divine order. And the lesson was he provided was through a meal. When we eat, we recognize taking in that divine sustenance. When we drink, we recognize that connection between our human self and our divine self that is always flowing and always present. So all of this is happening that evening of Maundy Thursday. Following that, Jesus goes into the garden at Gethsemane. Always have trouble saying that in the moment. And Jesus is, of course, spending his time in prayer. And as the story is written about Jesus in prayer, he is having a very human time of it. He is, all the things that are going on are showing up to be blessed, to be released in prayer. And he is practicing his divine power of release, because a lot of the anguish that we have as human beings is around our attachment to how we want things to go, how things ought to be going. And Jesus he's a human man. He has that too. He doesn't want to have to go through all of the things that he knows are coming. So he is practicing that power of release, letting go of his human attachments to how things ought to happen, letting those go, cutting them loose, surrendering, and stepping into the space, surrendering his will. And here's where we also tie in the power of will, surrendering his human will through that power of release, his human will, and stepping into the space of aligning with divine will. So, setting aside his human desires, moving into the space of divine will, where we can make a decision, move forward, and do so feeling grounded in our spiritual truth. So there's a lot that happens that evening. Jesus is taken by the soldiers, arrested. Through the night and into the early morning of Friday of Holy Week, called Good Friday, Jesus undergoes a series of trials before Jewish and Roman authorities. And of course, by mid-morning, he is killed by means of crucifixion alongside two other men. Now, this crucifixion was a method of public execution that the Romans used. They used it regularly, so we hear a lot about Jesus's death in that way, and yet there were many people who were also divine expressions of that which we call God, who were killed in the same way. The story of Jesus shows us him showing up, demonstrating his divine power of strength as he works through all the different events leading up to his death. And as he is going through his death process, he is showing us, he is displaying for us the divine power of wisdom. Because even in that moment, those moments, as he is going through that, divine wisdom is expressing through him. And if we look at, we could do a whole talk, of course, or even more on the last 7 statements that Jesus makes, but we can kind of encapsulate those today as expressions of divine wisdom. He expresses forgiveness, saying they know not what they do. He expresses his compassion for the men that are to either side of him, because those men are going through the same process that he is. He affirms the bonds of love by recognizing the loved ones that he has present, the women and one of his disciples. And he kind of reaffirms for them, you know, see your mother, see your child. He witnesses that for them. He acknowledges the incredible burden of the human pain that he is experiencing, and yet he's there with his power of spiritual strength. Wisdom is there also to make sense of the completion of the human life and the ministry that he's been involved with. And the last thing that he states affirms his oneness with the Father, with God. All of this wisdom showing up while he's going through an incredibly powerful and painful human passing. Here's a quote from Richard Rohr in The Universal Christ. Holy Week challenges us to step into the mystery of surrender, where wisdom is not found in avoiding suffering, but in discovering love's deeper power through it. So there's Richard Rohr recognizing love and wisdom. All of that is present. A day passes during which nothing is heard from Jesus. His body has been wrapped and placed in a tomb. There's plenty of other activities going on, but we're focusing on Jesus today. And then, of course, we move on to Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. And with his resurrection, Jesus's expression of new life breaks every boundary in consciousness at that time. It breaks the boundaries of death and fear and despair and the limits of human imagination. He's showing us, demonstrating for us that this energy, this power that we call life, is not limited to this physical human form. It is an energy that is vibrating through every cell of our body, through every thought and feeling held in our consciousness. But as Jesus rises, he expresses all the depth of his divine nature as an example to us that life does not end with physical death, that it continues on expressing. Here are 2 quotes from CSL minister Scott Aubrey on his website, Spiritual Passages. When Jesus walked out of the tomb, he emerged into the fullness of his divine nature. He was becoming all he was called to be, and in doing so, showed us that resurrection is not only an event, but a realization. Second quote, Easter is not merely a remembrance of a divine prophet from 2 millennia ago. It is an invitation to awaken to the divinity within ourselves, to the sacred potential that lives and breathes and awaits to rise in each one of us. And so on Easter, we follow the example of Jesus. We rise and celebrate the light of our own spirit as it exists in oneness with the Spirit of Jesus. As we become awake to the divinity that is the truth of what we are, we rise. As we pivot our attention away from the trials of our outer lives and focus on our divine nature, we rise. As we get quiet long enough to hear that still small voice, we rise. So we're going to move today into an extended meditation, again, based on the 12 powers. We're going to be rising through the body. So we're going to kind of start with where we're all sitting, and there will be plenty of affirmations. I would encourage those of you who like to take notes to just not do that while we're doing this. Just be present. You can always go back and look at the recording and capture some affirmations along the way. I just want you to be present through this process. Are you ready? Okay. So let's begin with a couple of deep breaths. Feel the breath in the body. Feel the body in the seat. We begin today with that area of the body, the seat where you're sitting. Bring your focus to the front of the physical body, right down at the level where you're sitting. Right there is where we find the physical center of the power of life. For those who like to use colors to associate with the 12 powers, the color here is red. No matter how things appear in my life, I recognize the energy of divine life, expressing through every cell of my body, every thought and feeling held in consciousness. With each breath, I rise in wholeness and vitality. Shift our attention now from the front of the body in the same area to the back of the body. And this is the location for the power of release. The color for this power is a russet brown. And as I focus my attention there, I remind myself now that I have the power to eliminate beliefs and thoughts that no longer serve my highest good. As I practice release, I create space for fresh, new mindsets. As I release attachments, I rise in joyful consciousness. Now we shift our attention, moving up just a little bit to the lower back. And this is the seat of spiritual strength. The color here is a light green. It's an Easter color, the green of new shoots on a spring blossom. As I lean into my spiritual strength, I am able to be flexible with all the changes of life while holding steady to what I know to be true. As I bend, I do not break. As I rise in strength, I endure. I hold steady. We move our attention now back towards the front of the body, to the belly. This is the seat of the power of order. And the color here is a dark green, a dark olive green. This is where our body processes all of its nutrition, and order itself is a process. When life feels overwhelming, I listen to my gut. I claim my power of order. I do not have to know all the answers right now. After resting in the silence and centering in truth, I realize the next best step. One step at a time, I rise with ease and grace. Shift our attention now up to the solar plexus, that space right between your navel and your ribs. This is the seat of the power of wisdom or discernment or judgment. The color here is a bright yellow. As life presents opportunities, I use my spiritual wisdom to evaluate my human choices. I step away from the ways of the world and anchor my discernment in spiritual truth. When my human eyes see opposing duality, I rise into the dazzling rainbow of opportunities for good. We shift our attention up now to the heart space. This is the seat of the power of love. And the unity color here is pink, pink for love. I am able to shine the light of love into every challenging situation. I choose to remain present through difficult circumstances, seeing the light of Christ shining through every individual. When my human eyes do not see a way through, I see with the unifying eyes of love. As I claim harmony, I rise and align myself with goodness. Shift our attention now up to the throat. This is the seat, the power of mastery, the power of power, the power of dominion. And should you choose to think of it, the color here is a royal purple, like a sovereign color. In moments of doubt or confusion, I choose to speak powerful words of truth. When my thoughts and feelings show me fear and lack, I brush them aside and claim my good with clarity. I know my words have power, and I choose them mindfully. As I rise, I know I am the light. I am the truth. I am the way. Shift our attention now up to the base of the brain, at the back of the neck. And this right here is the seat of the power of zeal, and the color is a brilliant orange. I meet perceived obstacles in my life with passionate intentions. When I feel I've lost my way, I encourage myself with energetic thoughts and affirmations. I recognize my devotional practice as a quiet form of spiritual zeal. as I rise into new experiences, I do so with joyful enthusiasm. And now, my friends, we bring our attention right up to in between the eyes. Right here is the seat of our spiritual imagination. The color here is a light blue, like the color of the sky. I realize that there are boundless opportunities in spirit. I intentionally open myself to possibilities by claiming my power of spiritual imagination. I claim goodness beyond what my human brain can conceive. I rise as I open myself to dreams and visions of my highest good. Now we're moving up just a little bit higher to the forehead. And there are a pair of spiritual powers that anchor right there in the forehead. The first one, the power of understanding. And the color there is gold. Gold like the metal. I seek understanding beyond the knowledge of the intellect. I open myself to perceiving the divine in every person and every situation. I understand and embrace the truth of my divine nature. I express compassion as I witness the truth in all living beings. I rise as I truly understand the one presence and one power as fully present across all dimensions. Partnered there at the forehead with the power of understanding is the power of will. It's silver, so we have gold and silver right here at the forehead. I am willing to look to spirit as my guide in all circumstances. My spiritual beliefs and practice inspire me with the confidence to make choices with ease. Claiming my divine nature as my guide, I take action with clarity. As I set aside my human will, I rise in divine will. And finally, we move to the center of the head, right in the middle. I can't put my finger on it, but right there in the middle is the seat of the power of faith, and the color is a royal blue. I believe that goodness is active and present no matter what the appearances. I rest patiently with ease, grounded in the conviction of my spiritual beliefs. I choose to remain confident and settled through all the challenges of my life. As I demonstrate my power of faith, I rise in divine consciousness. So, my friends, I invite you to be present with all of these energies throughout the body, these divine lights that are you and were all of those who came before you and all who will come ahead of you. Feel all of this, sense all these vibrations, and let us move into a time in the stillness together. And as we begin to bring our focus back to the present moment, to the body in the seat, and the breath moving in and out of the body, share with you a quote from Scripture. This is from Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. So we'll close our time of meditation with an affirmation. I'll say it once and then you can repeat it with me a couple times at home. Here it is. As I rise, I am divine light, and I am grateful. Say it with me, friends. As I rise, I am divine light, and I am grateful. Let's say it one more time. As I rise, I am divine light, and I am grateful. Thank you so much for being here with us today, my friends. And I am going to turn it back over to our friend Andrea.
Oh, Reverend Cheryl, there were a lot of pearls in there. I think it was an entire necklace. Thank you. And to everyone else, here now or later, thanks for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for watching, and see you next